Not one, but two defensive backs have left the University of Alabama. What do we make of that? We bring on Luke Robinson, Locked On Alabama, joining me here on the show. Tony Mitchell and Peyton Woodyard. Let's start with Mitchell. He's the more experienced of the two. What did you think when you heard that he put his name in the transfer portal?
I was expecting it to a degree because I had been made aware that this is something that very well may happen. In fact, is probable. But it didn't happen until later on, to like the very end of the portal, right? So I was thinking, okay, maybe he stays. And what's interesting about the Tony Mitchell situation that everybody may not know outside of Alabama is Tony Mitchell got in some pretty hot water right after he signed with the Tide. And again, I'm going off of memory, but he was in Florida. Excuse me. He had some stuff in the car that shouldn't have been in the car. He was going an excessive speed. I mean, like incredible speed, something bananas. And he got in a lot of trouble, and Alabama stuck with him though. And he didn't really play this last year. He was sort of, I mean, maybe half-heartedly suspended in a way. I mean, even if he could have played, I don't know if he would have played till later on. But I don't think he was ready anyway. And then he bails. Now, what you don't know in today's transfer portal world is, was he pushed out a little bit? Was he encouraged to get in? Or did he just want to go somewhere? Or did somebody call him up and through a friend of a friend offer more money or whatever? You don't know. But it is interesting because he can't transfer to an SEC school now. So it's not going to be like, hey, I really love this other school that was recruiting me. I think he's going to have to go somewhere else. And he's going to have to go somewhere else that's going to take a chance on a kid that bailed on the school that took a chance on him. And again, I'm not bad mouthing him. More power to him. Kids are able to do this now, whether you like it or not. I personally am not a huge fan of it, but since you can do it, they might as well. And I don't know that this really affects Alabama's depth too terribly much. It does in terms of a warm body being in the defensive backfield. But this was not a guy that had brought up a ton of experience. In fact, if you had told me, I'm more dejected that Peyton Woodyard left than I am Tony Mitchell left. And that's just the way it is. Tony Mitchell just hadn't really made his mark. Peyton Woodyard had a nice spring. He had a nice play in the spring game. And I think it was a little surprising. I think that he is one of those that probably was able to get in touch with somebody, or somebody got in touch with him, and they made the selling point like, hey, you went to play for Nick Saban. Nick Saban's not there anymore. In fact, Peyton Woodyard, if you remember, in his recruiting profile picture where he committed to Alabama, he was wearing Saban's very famous straw hat. And I think that was sort of an excuse to be able to go somewhere closer to home. They would probably pay him some money as well. Again, this is me theorizing, but also taking an educated guess. And more power to him, I guess. I certainly hate it for the Tide because I think he's going to be a good player. And I hate that he didn't even stick around for 1 year just to see, hey, maybe this can work for me. But it is what it is. And meanwhile, Alabama's gone out and gotten a kid named Cameron Martin from the University of Charlotte, and who had recently gotten the transfer portal. And experienced guy, not a bad player at all. He was at the University of Charlotte, though. Let's call a spade a spade. It wasn't like he was playing at Ohio State. So they've lost Caleb Downs. They've lost Tony Mitchell. They've lost Peyton Woodyard. They bring in Keon Sabb from Michigan, who's a good player. He, in my opinion, he's not Caleb Downs, but I don't know if anybody else in the country is. And they bring in Cam Martin, who I think is also a pretty good player and can certainly add some depth. And then they're going to have three freshmen that are probably going to have to be counted on a lot.
So I want to go on the Woodyard thing for a moment, because this is happening more and more, where Peyton Woodyard is a 2024 high school recruit. Now, granted, he committed to play for Nick Saban, and that was back in January. But he went through spring football, and you would think that if you were going to leave because the coach you committed to play for retired, went somewhere else, or whatever, I think everybody understands that. But this increasing, I don't think it's widespread, but there's an increasing number of players who commit, they show up for spring football, they go through spring football, and then transfer out before they've ever taken a single snap. And look, the door swings both ways. Caden Proctor just did this, of course, with Iowa. He was transferring out and then decided, oh, no, I'm going to go back and join. And he actually transferred to Alabama the first day that the spring portal window opened here. But what do you kind of make of that, Luke? How difficult is that for coaches and for Kalen DeBoer to know that you bring guys in, but at any point in time, if they don't think they're going to play as a true freshman when they expect to, they might just go out and transfer somewhere else? I think it's got to feel as a head coach like somewhat of a wasted amount of effort. You think about the time, money, resources that goes into recruiting a kid, and then he never even plays a game for you. Like, if coaches are frustrated by that, I can't blame them.
Yeah, coaches are probably finally earning their exorbitant salaries. I mean, I say finally earning, I don't mean to take a shot at them, but some people thought coaches were overpaid, and they had these tremendous buyouts even if they stunk. Well, now, look, having to deal with this headache 24/7, 365, yeah, I think it's worth it. I mean, it's worth the money. It's just it's a sad state of affairs. I've talked about it every show I've been on. That, look, I understand for rightly or wrongly, the players feel like they have been hosed for years, like they hadn't been getting their piece of the pie, like everybody's been taking advantage of them. And in a way, I think they're right. I don't think it's been that way forever, but I think once the money got big enough, everybody needed to get together and say, look, we got to do something to sort of nip this in the bud. Well, the NCAA took a hardline stance that was frankly very stupid and greedy, and it has come to bite them in the butt. What's happened is the pendulum has swung from one side to the other so violently and so quickly. I mean, it's done a complete 180. It was all the way this side, now it's all the way that side. We need, as fans, we need it to be a little bit more in the middle. And I don't really know what that answer even looks like anymore, because I think it would be helpful. The essence of college football, the foundation of it, is built on the passion that the fans have for their respective universities. And that passion is rooted in not only did most of them go to that respective university or just grow up in that state or have a family member that went there, whatever, but it was watching these kids come in and then get better as the years go on and progress. Watching somebody like a Mac Jones stick it out at Alabama and wait his turn behind all these other incredible quarterbacks. But even going back much further than that, in the 80s and 90s specifically, when guys, they come in as freshmen and they're just wide-eyed and they don't know what the heck's going on. Next thing you know, they're sophomores and they're beginning to pick it up. And then as juniors, they might become all SEC, and then they're all Americans as seniors. And you watched that whole thing and you felt like, hey, that guy's part of my family. Well, now your family is like, it's like an uncle that just gets a divorce every year and a half. I mean, he brings in a new, step aunt for you every time there's a Thanksgiving, and you're like, okay, who are you bringing in now? I mean, I still love her, I guess, because she's my aunt, but I mean, like, I know she's short term.
It's much more mercenary. It's got that sort of feel that the engagement between players and fans, I think in a lot of ways is now limited from the fan side to when the games are played. Because once the season ends, it feels like it's just a free-for-all, and yeah, I know I did like these fans and whatnot, but that's not what actually matters to me here. And I think that's the disconnect.
And it's also very emblematic of what's going on in society. I don't like something, I'll just get rid of it instead of trying to make it better, or trying to work on a relationship, or trying to do anything else, or hey, I've borrowed too much money, somebody will forgive it. I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying, there's a lot of things like that where people don't want to work through their issues anymore. They feel like everything's got to be solved right now. And the only way to do that is to get rid of something else. And if that may mean get rid of the current school you're in, instead of trying to grow and get better. That said, I understand very seriously that some kids make a mistake in recruiting and they may want to go home, or their mother really is sick and they need to be closer to them. And there's some people out there that need to go to another school for whatever reason. Maybe a coach just had it out for them or whatever. I understand that. So we need to find a happy medium here, because I like the transfer portal where something like you can transfer once, and then if you want to transfer again, you're fine, but you got to sit out. I don't care if you're a graduate. I don't care what it is. I would actually be fine if they said, here's the deal. From now on, everybody's got 5 years. There's no more red shirts. You can play 5 years. Now, if you there's no 6th year, there's no 7th year. I mean, there's somebody in basketball coming up, it's going to be a 9th year. I mean, give me a break.
Well, COVID played a part in that.
I understand.
I hope we don't have another one of those situations arise.
I understand, but this even translates to the NFL in a way, if you ask me, because people say we're becoming more like the NFL. But even in the NFL, who was the most fun team to watch this year? It's probably the Detroit Lions, and everybody loved them. And you know what the Detroit Lions did for the most part? They built through the draft.
Mm-hmm.
They really did. You think about some of their major players, the Sam Laporta from Iowa, he was awesome, right? And they drafted him. They drafted J-Mo Williams, who played really well. They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, they drafted, think about who's the most beloved Detroit Lions ever. Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders. They were
Matt Stafford.
They were lifers. Well, Stafford, Stafford went on, moved on, but Stafford would have been. I mean, I think Detroit was like, it's just time for everybody to move, and I get that. But, I think that it's better when a group stays together and you can put your arms around them. I mean, in basketball, look, and I love this Alabama basketball team this last year. But it's a bunch of new dudes, and it was a bunch of new dudes the year before, and it'll be a bunch of new dudes next year. Now, Grant Nelson's going to come back, and that's great. Mark Sears hopefully will come back, and that's great. Maybe Jaron Stevenson. But, they lost a lot of guys in the transfer portal. The only guy that could not come back was Aaron Estrada, yet Alabama's going to have massive turnover in basketball. I just would like to see where not necessarily we're all chained to one another, like you choose this school, and that's your school for life. I don't necessarily want that. I get it. But, boy, I wish people would stick it out a little bit more. I think it just makes a little bit more sense.
Luke Robinson, Locked on Alabama. We hit all sorts of topics today. I'm here for it, as always. Luke, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, bud.
In the new look ACC, which one of those three new coming teams is going to make the most noise? Might be Cal. That's coming up next.